Welcome to Fuzzybutts and Friends. Well, as much as it drives Fuzzybutts all over this place absolutely crazy when they hear me say it, I am the host of the show, Yer Big Dog, Luke Robinson. I'm back again with you this week. And look over to my left, who's back with us again is Ginger Morgan. She's our co-host, co-producer, and she's also the executive director of the Puppy Up Foundation. Ginger, how are you?
Luke, I am doing well. This week is pretty exciting on a couple of fronts. The Slobber Saloon will be making it into Hollywood Feed on the 16th to hand out some concoctions that I'm going to come out with for kind of a doggy beer Sunday kind of thing for the dogs, and it'll all be green. So that's Hollywood Feed on Union for anybody here in Memphis. And then the 16th also marks the 16th anniversary of when you, Hudson, and Murphy headed out for your trek from Austin to Boston.
Yeah, 16 years since we left Austin to Boston to begin our adventure. Actually, Malcolm began our journey, and I feel every year of it, actually, to be honest. But
I bet you do.
we have lots to celebrate. It was really an incredible journey, and we still have some stories to tell and lots of things to share with everyone. So stay tuned on that front. But before we do that, Ginger, we have a really, what I think is an important guest. It's such an important, powerful, and I think really it's a high priority, I think, in our country, and it's one I don't think we talk enough about, Ginger. So I'm happy to introduce our guest this week. It's Mindi Callison. She's with we've talked about her organization before on this show. She's with Bailing Out Benji. She's the founder, and she's got a lot of important things to talk to us about. Mindi, welcome to Fuzzy Butts and Friends.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. All right, we like to start the show. I know the topic we'll be discussing today is traumatic. It's tough, it's painful, but before we get into all that, all of the important things, we like to start off with a little bit of levity. So tell us, do you have fuzzy butts yourself? And if so, tell us about them.
I do. My husband and I love each other so much that we don't have any kids. We put all of our love and our passion into typically senior dogs or hospice dogs that we foster or adopt. Right now, our house has 4 retrievers. We have 3 black labs and 1 golden retriever. And our golden retriever, her name is Eleanor. You can find her actually on Instagram. It's Eleanor the Survivor, but she was rescued from one of the worst puppy mills in the country that we helped shut down. And so my husband and I are really good at sharing our home with animals that need us the most. And dogs like Eleanor, these puppy mill survivors, they really need extra patience, extra love, and extra care. And those are the types of dogs we love bringing into our home.
Well, God bless you for doing that. I've traveled a lot, and I've met a lot of wonderful yeah, dog lovers, animal people on my travels, and I have a special place in my heart for the ones that adopt and care for and give love to the senior dogs and the geriatric dogs, and certainly the survivors of and I think you said hospice too. Those are the tough cases. I have an aging dog, a geriatric dog, Indiana myself, and his mobility continues to decline, and it's just been emotionally taxing every single day. He can't really get up, so he whines a lot to when he needs water, when he needs to go outside, and so I can only imagine that what that's like. I think I've met some with half a dozen or so. So did you say 4? You have 4 dogs?
Yeah, right now we have 4, but no one thankfully is geriatric at this
Okay.
point. Our oldest is an 11-year-old lab, but she came to us as a puppy mill survivor when she was young too. But yeah, usually my husband and I will have 1 super senior is what we call them in our home. And our Crystal just passed away a year ago, so we haven't filled that super senior spot yet because it was hard watching her decline. We had had her for quite a while. And so having that bond and then watching an animal that you love still be so mentally sharp, but have their bodies really start failing them. I think that's a lot harder to deal with than other dogs sometimes.
Definitely. I love the fact that you said that your oldest is 11, but you don't consider him geriatric. And that's how I have 3 older dogs. at this point. And I don't really consider any of them geriatric and one of them is over 16 years old. So she still gets around, and I'm assuming she's like beyond geriatric in the veterinary world,
Right. Well, and all of that depends on the food you're feeding them, the nutrients you're giving them, and of course the vet care. So yeah, the
Yeah,
more you love and spoil them, hopefully the longer they'll live.
yeah.
Well, are
Hopefully,
all,
yes.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Are all four of them rescues from puppy mills?
Two of them are for sure rescues from puppy mills. One of them is a little puppy that my husband and I were asked to foster last year. She was completely emaciated. She was found as a stray, and she was about 4 months old at the time, but you could see every bone in her body. And I live right here in Iowa, which is the headquarters of Puppy Mill Central. And so we're not sure why this purebred lab puppy was found in bushes outside, completely starved, but we had fostered her. We thought she was going to be a hospice case. Her body was like cold to the touch. Took us weeks to slowly get weight on her because of her condition. And then my husband fell in love and wanted to adopt her. So we adopted her as our fourth dog. Normally we would stick around 3. But she's the one keeping our 11-year-old lab young. They are just best friends. You would have no idea there's an age difference now.
That's
I,
funny.
I like how you said it, that you love your husband so much that you decide you both agreed not to have kids of the human kind, but instead the fuzzy butt kind. And I resemble that, and I certainly appreciate that. We have lots to talk about, and it all begins, and we sort of hinted at it previously, but it all begins with Benji. I don't know if you have any pictures of Benji or even Eleanor. You're free to share those if you'd like to. I can share the screen with you or give you the ability to share the screen. We like to show pictures, but that's entirely up to you. But tell us about Benji, where your whole organization began.
So I'm going to start with a story really quick and lead into who Benji is. I was a 19-year-old college student. I was away from home for the first time, and I was very lonely. We've all experienced, traveling across the world, across the country, trying to find new friends, find new family, find a new pattern. And for me, I was so busy at school and I had a job that I decided I wanted to go to the local pet store and just play with the puppies. I had never been into a pet store. I've never been into a Petland specifically. I'm unsure if either of you have, but it's kind of just like a wall of glass aquariums that dogs live in. And I just went and wanted to play with the puppies, and the store man or employee at the time was so pushy. They were saying, "Well, look at this baby. He loves you. You need him. Oh, we don't want to have to put him back in his cage." And they were using all of these emotional triggers, emotional words to get me to want to keep playing with that puppy. And when I mentioned that I didn't have $1,500 to spend on a Siberian Husky at that time, again, reminder, I was in college living in an apartment and I was very busy and they wanted to sell me a Husky. But I was very clear, I don't have funding for this. I'm a poor college kid. And they're like, here, we'll give you a credit card. They didn't tell me the credit card had a 30% interest rate. And keep in mind, this was back in like 2007, 2006. Like it was a while ago. So that interest rate's even higher now. And so I walked away that day with the dog, the toys, the treats, the kennel, as I'm just signing my life away. The puppy is biting on you. The person you're talking to is distracting you, and I'm just signing these documents. And I go home to play with my puppy who, like any 8-week-old Siberian Husky, destroyed my life. He destroyed all my cell phones, like had to keep getting new ones. I just wasn't equipped, right? I was a young kid. But about 2 weeks later, I learned about puppy mills because that store I bought my dog from was featured in the news. And I learned the hard way that my dog was born in one of the largest puppy mills in Iowa. And at the time, I was so young, I couldn't see past my own toes. I was thinking, my dog is sick. My dog could be sick. Is he going to live the rest of his life happy, healthy? What's it going to cost me? I didn't stop to think for a second that my dog's parents and grandparents were still suffering at that puppy mill. And so at the time, his name is Ozzy. And so where I'm getting to Benji is a few years later, went through college, started my teaching career, and I saw another puppy store in my new hometown selling puppies. And it all just came flooding back. I knew there was something I had to do about this industry. And so I started writing. And I decided to start writing our blog, Bailing Out Benji. And Benji is the name that we give all of the animals on this earth who leave without knowing kindness, who leave without ever having a name. And so the name Benji is what we give to all of the dogs and puppy mills, all of the cats and puppy mills. We know they're more than a number, and we want to make sure they have a name.
Well, so Benji isn't really a dog then.
It's everybody, yeah.
Benji, so that I really like that because it personalizes and humanizes the horrific reality of all of the anonymous dogs that are just churned out in tremendous numbers. I looked at your website. I did due diligence. I guess I didn't read the part about Benji, but I was looking at the numbers. And we're talking, millions of dogs, puppy mill dogs, and I had no idea, Mindy, that it was that high. So did you know at that time that it was this big of a problem?
No, I really didn't. So I mentioned that pet store. I went in because this is my backyard. And I was like, oh, I would love to know where you get your puppies from. And the pet store owner gave me a business card. And he was so like, oh, yeah, it's a great breeder up the road. I looked on the USDA website and they had 400 breeding dogs. And I was like, I went to visit the place. I wanted to see in person. I needed to see, right? And after I met with the breeder, I heard horrific stories like, don't stick your fingers in the cages. The dogs will bite your fingers. They think they're hot dogs. Weird, weird things going on there. I went back to the store and I was like, did you know that this is a puppy mill? Oh my gosh. And he literally said, you silly little girl, I've been using this breeder for decades. Get out of my store. And that's the moment when I was like, oh, this goes deeper. This goes deeper than a hidden industry. There are people that know and don't care. And so I started researching Iowa's problem to begin with. And we are constantly, that's where Bailing Out Benji was founded. We're constantly one of the worst states in the nation for puppy mills, for puppy mill cruelty, for violations, and the sheer number of dogs living in these kennels. And as we started educating and protesting and giving more presentations across the country, we were tapped to be a part of a documentary, which is called Dog by Dog. And you can still find it online. At the time, it was on Netflix and it was streaming across the country. And from there, people across the country were like, we need Bailing Out Benji here. You need to come to Texas. We need you here. And I was a teacher. I didn't even think I would be founding a nonprofit. So the fact that now my nonprofit might be in other states and I'm sure you totally resonate with this feeling. You
Yep.
start an idea in your own backyard and then all of a sudden, you're everywhere. And so we started researching puppy mills across the country. And now we have volunteers in 36 states who are working on this issue because it's so prevalent. And there's so many puppy mills, puppy stores that are selling those puppies, and websites that you can just click and ship a puppy mill puppy to your door.
Go ahead,
One
please.
of the points that you made when you were the teenager and they kept pushing and they put all the emotional buttons. Then I think here in Memphis, we have at least one store that sells puppies. And of course, it's right next to my chiropractor's office. And so I went over there, same thing, like, now, where do you get your puppies from? Blah, blah, and they appear to be doing everything right. You can't hold a puppy or play with a puppy there unless you are seriously thinking about purchasing the puppy. Their hygiene, the way they take care of everything and sanitize everything. I mean, if you want to play with that puppy, you have to gown up. It just makes it look like they are so concerned. But if that puppy is sick and it dies, they're just going to get another one.
Well, the juxtaposition of that is that the pet store is beautiful. Because the pet store is publicly inspected 100 times a day, right? You went in. but where
Yep.
those dogs came from. No one cares about the sanitization. No one cares about the
Right.
violations. So that's how the stores get away from with it. They say, but look, we're not a puppy mill. This is beautiful in here.
Yep.
But you
And
don't see
nice and
behind the
clean.
scenes.
It smelled clean. They had, I mean, I stayed in there for about, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 minutes, just browsing, and if a puppy spoiled their kennel, boy, there was somebody on the backside of that picking it up. I mean, it smelled good, it looked good, all bright and colorful, and yeah, I did fall in love with a little dachshund puppy in there, but I walked away. I was obviously not going to do that. I do way too
Right.
many rescue things.
Sounds
I
sounds
have
like
many dachshunds.
it
Right.
sounds like a dog dealership, kind of like a car dealership where everything is
Yeah.
shiny and new and exciting, and it's just a sales job. It's just they have a hard sale. That the people there that are employed at these places, they aren't they aren't animal caregivers. They aren't they aren't employed in the animal welfare community. They're just salespeople, and they employ, it sounds like to me, that these hard sale tactics. And the financing thing is the one that fascinates me the most, because when you were talking about Ozzy, I was I couldn't help but I couldn't help but wonder, I think you said $1,300. That's crazy expensive. Why would even though you're young and a bit naive and you just wanted a puppy, and I could totally understand. I wasn't there. Unfortunately, I didn't become a dog guy, or I didn't realize I was a dog lover until much later, almost 30, when I got Malcolm. But I can totally understand it. But wow, 30% will take care of it. So I just even before that, I would just think most people would say, you know what, there's a shelter down the road, or we have resources online that I can find a responsible breeder, and not pay that price. But it's the financing. It's the fact that they say, oh, you don't have to pay for anything right now. Just sign here, sign there, and you could take the puppy home right now. And the hook is, you fall in love with Ozzy, or you fall in love with, the puppy you adopt there, or you actually is not.
Goodbye.
Yeah, you can't call it adopting, right? It's you're acquiring. You're acquiring a dog. I've never done that. I've never paid for a puppy. Most of mine were all of mine are rescues except two that were given to me. So wow, that's a heck of a scam.
Well, let me blow your mind a little more, because that was a decade ago, right? Now they will offer you a lease or a loan to buy your dog. And again, now everything is off of paper and it's on an iPad. So you're scrolling through the fine print and you're initialing where they tell you to. We have documentation of pet stores in our country that are selling $3,000 puppies on 188% interest.
Good.
So
Oh
when
my
you
gosh.
walk in and you're spending $3,000 to $5,000 on a puppy, you are not told that interest rate. So to your point, how did I not know 30% was high? They didn't tell me that day. I didn't know till my bill came. And that's what we're seeing with customers. So these customers are sold a puppy with an unknown origin. And even if if the pet store gives you breeder information, they're not showing you nearly all of the information they should. But then you sign all of this paperwork and they say, no money down today, you'll get your first bill in the mail. You get that bill in the mail, say it's $125 payment a month. You see that 188% interest rate and you do the math and realize that's going to end up being a $30,000 dog. You could have bought a car. You could have put a down payment on a house by the time you're done, but you had no idea at the time of signing that you fell into this predatory financing trap. And thankfully, because we get a lot of these customer complaints, we get these contracts, we are able to help those customers file complaints with the Attorney General. And because of that, a lot of Attorney General's offices are weighing in on this issue, and they're trying to protect consumers somehow, because this is like the wild, wild west. The bank that's providing the lease and the loan, they're not even in the state that the pet store is operating. So it's different banking laws. They're finding all of these financial loopholes. And at the end of the day, the customer is the victim. And if that puppy gets sick or dies, they're still on the hook for every single payment until they are paid up.
That's unbelievable. We spoke to a previous guest, and before we jump into it, I just, the regulatory aspects and how frustrating it's been to get USDA inspections at these puppy mills and the breeders and so on and so forth. I mean, I'm a finance guy. I used to be a business guy, and so I know finance and I understand usury laws. So when I was speaking to a previous guest about the puppy mill issue, and we talked briefly about it, I didn't know 188%, but it just seems there should be usury laws, predatory lending laws, and disclosure laws. Like you said, is that they didn't even tell you what the APR, what the I don't even know, they couldn't say 30% APR, but whatever rate they use that fits within each state's, as you said, regulatory confines. It just seems like that would be, and it sounds like you're attacking them. If you can't shut these things down at the USD perspective, or get these animal humane laws passed in some of these backwards states that are just reticent to those. It just seems like attacking them from the banking finance would be a way to go. And have you had some success there?
Yeah, so in one case here in Iowa, it was a Petland store, and I don't want to just say them, they might be the largest. There are over 600 puppy stores across the country right now that are actively selling puppies to the public. So there are a lot of businesses, not just one. But they were the ones that we first got that contract for 188% interest. We worked with our attorney general. We had the customers file complaints. We sent them everything we had. And after the attorney general looked at everything, they made that finance company repay everybody 100%. You didn't have to contact the family. They didn't have to say, like, jump through all these hoops to get their money. Our attorney general said, absolutely not. This company out of Utah must immediately give everybody their money back. And so we are seeing help that way. I think the biggest gap in what the animal welfare world focuses on, sometimes we forget about people, right? We hear it all the time in rescue. I hate people, so I rescue dogs. That's not our belief at Bailing Out Benji. We think people matter and we're very people focused. And talking to policymakers about this angle has changed the game. It's really hard to tell them about the suffering of a dog that they can't picture. A dog they don't know 500 miles away suffering in a puppy mill. But when we're able to say, here's how the people in your community are suffering, all of a sudden the policymakers are paying attention and they're seeing that this is a predatory industry, not just cruel to animals. They're going after people as well because money keeps this industry going.
No, that's keeps everything going.
Yeah.
That's a cool hidden to most people reality of life and existence, is that if you take away the finance, money is the fuel for the engine of the business to scale. And we live in a society now where everyone wants to scale businesses to the multi-millions, billions, and so on and so forth. Especially as I would imagine there's probably some foreign investment dollars in the United States in this industry as well. So if you're able to disincentivize or take away the financial incentive for them to make a ton of money, because 1,300, I'm not sure what their breeding costs are, if you've ever done analysis of that, but selling a puppy for $1,300, and I've heard about those prices before, and I'm just thinking, how could anybody pay that? But now it's apparent to me. So I realize that like you said, is that you can't really get angry at people. It's just an education and awareness issue, right? So that's a tremendous job that you have, because here at our foundation, our job is in large part to educate people and raise awareness about cancer and companion animals, and that there are tremendous options now, and treatment options and diagnostic options out there, and for you to be able to get a good outcome with your fuzzy butt. But it's so big. I was shocked to hear that. Did you say 36 states there are puppy mills? Is that
No,
correct?
36 states is where we have volunteers.
Volunteers.
But there are puppy mills all over the country that can be found in every state. We are currently monitoring around 6,300 active puppy mills they have violations or they're selling sight unseen to customers through pet stores, through online websites. We're known for having the world's largest database when it comes to puppy mills. Thankfully, I've been keeping lots of extensive notes since I founded this organization. So our database has only grown every year.
6,300. That's tremendous. Are those in the United States alone, or is that worldwide?
Just the United States.
Just the United States.
Most of them are here in the Midwest.
Wow. So it really is big business. And so the way to the way to punish or I guess cripple or disincentivize is probably the more proper legal term, is to just take away the financial incentive for big business or for businesses to scale at that level, and you wouldn't see that size. But all right, so let's talk about well, let's talk about the numbers though. I didn't write down the numbers here off of your website. How many? It was over how many puppy mill dogs do you think are there in the United States currently?
So that's a tough question. We know that like between 2 and 5 million puppies are sold every year from these commercial kennels and from these puppy mills. That's just what we know about based on the legal sales of animals. Unfortunately, there's still so many illegal puppy mills that we're going after, right? So that's kind of the best estimate guess, and that's from like the national organizations, from like the HSUS. That's the number that they will tout as well. When it comes to the number of dogs trapped, I can tell you, like in the state of Iowa, it's over 20,000 adult breeding dogs just in commercial dog breeding kennels. In Missouri, that number is over 50,000 adult breeding dogs in these commercial kennels. And for anyone listening, if you're not aware, according to the USDA, a dog in a commercial kennel only needs 6 inches of extra space around its body. So they measure from the top of the head to the bottom of the cage, or to the top of the cage, excuse me, and that has to be 6 inches. And then they measure from the tailbone to the back of the cage, not even the tail. And so as long as these dogs can stand up, turn around, and lay down, they can live in this box the rest of their lives. That is okay by the USDA. And so back to Ginger, when you were in Petland and they told you, oh, these dogs aren't from puppy mills, they're from USDA breeders. The public loves that, but no one knows that those are the most lax laws in our country for those animals. So when I'm giving you those figures, 50,000 dogs in Missouri alone, adult dogs in Missouri, that's a lot of animals living in cages because the USDA and the different state departments say it's okay.
Yeah, their cages are prisons. I mean, 6 inches of headroom, or that's just insane that the USDA. I've talked to a lot of people about FDA, USDA, the difference between the two regulatory agencies as they pertain to animal welfare and also drug development and so on and so forth. And I always thought that the USDA was a much more competent, much more thorough inspecting agency, but it sounds like that the USDA set those regulations. How could they justify that?
So it's a great question. The USDA hasn't updated their regulations since 1966.
Good.
So all of the laws that all of these breeders across the country are following have not been updated. That's why it's on the states a lot of times. So again, I keep referencing Iowa because that's where I'm at. We have the Iowa Department of Ag, and they also oversee dog breeders. In other states, the breeder would have to listen to both the state department and the federal, right? Iowa and USDA. But in our state, there's a loophole, and these breeders don't have to even follow our calm or our strong state laws. So we've worked hard to pass things on the state level that go above and beyond USDA standards. But right now, those breeders don't even have to follow it, which is why we are in the news all the time, because we are getting puppy mills shut down in the state because now we are going after them. We're taking the USDA out of the equation, and we are going straight to the local sheriff with our state's cruelty laws. And we're saying, this is exactly how this person broke our state cruelty code. You're the sheriff, please do something. And we have seen great success. We just had a breeder get 41 charges of animal neglect from a case that happened last summer. That's unheard of for anyone to get 41 charges in anything, but specifically for a breeder who had to have 131 dogs seized.
Cheers,
Wow.
cheers to that. That's just incredible. So the fact that that there's a federal regulatory requirement that's 60 years old, it just amazes me. Just out of curiosity, why can't you make any headway? Why can't you penetrate or get in touch with the legislators and make them aware that the USDA has these medieval requirements that no longer apply.
Well, on the federal level, there have been two bills that have been constantly introduced and reintroduced, and you know how that goes on the federal level. Getting anyone to agree on anything is so hard, and both of those bills would essentially upgrade the USDA Animal Welfare Act, so upgrade those regulations. On the state level here in Iowa, we talked for months to our policymakers, and we're like, this is the answer. We even told them, here's the part of the code you can fix, super easy, just help us out. And we had a bill introduced, but it just wasn't the priority because, again, our lawmakers sometimes create their own priorities, right? Based on what they
Yes, they
feel is
do.
important. And so if we can't get them to care about this issue, and they care when it's not policy time, when it's not the 2 months that they have to pass bills, I see our policymakers using our research, touting our headlines that we're getting out in the news. They're mad it's happening in their backyard, but when it's time to vote on it, they're not trying to get it out of committee. They're not talking to their own lawmakers or their own friends and colleagues about how important this is. So it's just, at what point do you stop working on policy and you just will focus on people and animals and educating? It's
Right.
tough.
Right, but I guess in one way, well, it doesn't make sense. It's Kafkaesque and to me that you can't get legislators to make this a priority because it's such a big problem, and it just amazes me. But I find it fascinating that you're having success at the local level, at the community level, and I guess it makes sense because you're able to go and show pictures and say, hey, look, this is happening right here in your backyard. These are clear cases of abuse situations. I mean, putting a dog in a kennel or prison where they have no more than 6 inches around them, and I'm assuming that they remain there their entire life.
So the females get removed when they're birthing, and the males get removed to breed, and that's it. Usually these facilities have a vet that come and check them in their cages. It's just kind of you check them by eyes. Sometimes they get their updated shots. But yeah, we're reading in these inspection records that a lot of breeders aren't getting their animals out of their cages. If the cage is, say, twice that size, the animal never has to leave. If the cage is just 6 inches larger than their body, the breeder needs to have an exercise plan on paper, but no one makes sure that exercise plan. No one's walking 500 dogs, right?
Yeah.
So no one is making sure this exercise plan is actually being executed in a meaningful way.
Well, yeah. I mean, how does 400, if you have 405 or 500 breeding dogs there, you have to have the support staff to walk them and care for them. And I mean, it doesn't seem like the math would be that complicated to do to check. It's like, okay, well, it's easy. It would take, X number of employees to be able to manage and take care of, these many dogs. Do you have those employees on staff or do you not? And they would be able to show that they didn't have that. And it just seems like, wow, what a nightmare scenario that you're dealing with. But have you actually? I'm sure you have. But how many of these breeding facilities, these puppy mills, have you personally toured that you've seen yourself?
Oh, most of them in Iowa. I don't think, and I haven't said this yet, and I should, I don't think all breeders are puppy mills, and I don't think all breeders are bad. I wish everyone would adopt because there are so many homeless animals out there, but there are responsible breeders who are doing it the right way. And so I always want to make sure, do I have all of the information in front of me before I have called someone a puppy mill or before I have taken an action on something. And so a lot of these facilities, especially the problematic ones that we are going to file complaints with the local sheriff, I will go to. We don't trespass. We typically do drive-bys. In the past, we have set up appointments. You typically don't set up an appointment under your own name, especially now that everyone knows who I am and my own state. But we typically now, we don't even try to go that route because we don't want to trespass. We don't want to lie about who we are or what our intentions are. So what we see is what the public could see when they drive by.
Yeah, I have it on our list of discussion points to talk about reputable and responsible breeders, and I think most of our audience knows that there are plenty of those. And I've met so many wonderful breeders on my travels. Ginger, I think we've had one on our show before, and they talk about all of the things that are critical. That they track the health data, the genealogy, and they provide crucial and critical data and information, and they care about the breed standard, and the propagation of the breed. So it's good that you made that disclaimer and pointed that out, but I will get to that here in a minute. What does a responsible and reputable breeder look like? What should it look like? But my guess is though, Mindy, though, when you have such big numbers, could you ever say that the breeder that has 400 breeding dogs, could you ever consider them responsible? It doesn't seem like that to me unless you were staffed up to care for them.
Right. So that's
It's a big
really
operation.
hard. Right. And I haven't mentioned this yet, but there is no matrix for the number of employees a facility should have. So we have seen right now in Iowa, there was a facility with over 200 dogs and 1 employee. And the state and the USDA just kept saying, well, you might need to add some help. And they kept getting violations and violations. And finally, they were like, maybe you should downsize. It's always their recommendation. So they're never going to tell you you have to do this because there's no magic number for them to fall back on. In Iowa, we did have a breeder who had 177 Samoyed dogs seized because she was one woman in the middle of winter not getting them food, water, and shelter. It was ridiculous. And so when you go back to that like magic number, what makes a reputable breeder? I think if you're talking about hundreds of dogs, we are now talking about the factory farming of dogs. This
Right.
is pumping out animals for the pet industry. Are you doing it for the stability of that breed, of those genetics? Are you making sure those animals have the mental stimulation they need all day? There are a lot of questions when you start looking at kennel sizes that high. The really weird gray area for me is these smaller commercial kennels. So we're starting to see breeders go above and beyond in ways that they never have before. Breeders who now have their commercial kennels, right? So they might have 20 or 30 dogs, but now they have kennels that look like doggy daycares. They have a kennel that I would leave my own dog to stay and play. It's beautiful. It has stairs and slides and toys. We are seeing breeders trying to set themselves apart in this industry. And so I think that I can be an expert on what's wrong in this world, but I think we really need to start looking at those types of programs for the breeders to tell us what is going right and how we can keep separating the guys who aren't doing it as badly versus the guys who are milling out puppies and commercially breeding them to that scale.
It's an interesting topic, or it's interesting to think about, though, if there's a way that you could scale the responsible breeder. Because as you were talking, I love the fact, and we know this, we've known some breeders that have basically palaces for the ones in their breeding facilities. And as you know, that's sort of I think that's the standard. We go into pet stores and they're so pretty, they smell good. We now see all pet parents spend, thousands and thousands of dollars on dog beds and dog palaces. So there's plenty of money out there and available to responsible breeding, responsible pet care. It would be interesting to see, are there any breeders that are actually looking at trying to scale a responsible breeding facility? But you could have more than 10 or 20 dogs. You could scale bigger than that, but have it, like you said, like a resort. They have plenty of space. They have plenty of exercise. They have enrichment activities, and all these things. And then they can add 50 to 100, and they have it properly staffed and everything. Because there really is. I think the pet industry is, I don't, it's almost maybe over $100 billion now, Ginger. I think we spend on our fuzzy butts every year in this country. It's probably bigger than that. So it seems like if somebody can if a good breeding organization could put together a business model, then they can get that, financed, or they could raise some venture capital or get some investors in, because there should be money that goes to, investing in the responsible side of the business. Don't you think?
I do. And so what we see paperwork wise behind the scenes is that oftentimes a breeder in the Midwest will sell a puppy to a broker who's like the middleman. He drives the puppy to the store. So the breeder will sell the puppy to the broker for like $700. And then the broker will sell the puppy to the pet store for like, oh, sorry, I skipped a step. The breeder will sell the puppy to the broker for $150. We have documentation on that. And then we have the same documentation showing the broker resells the puppy for $750 to the pet store. Then the pet store sells it for $3,000, $5,000, upwards of $10,000 for a Frenchie in a pet store at this point. None of that money is trickling back down to the breeders. The breeders are under the most scrutiny. They're the ones who need to upgrade their standards, upgrade their kennels. To do that, they need money. And we all know trickle-down economics has never worked, and it does not work in this case. The pet industry, the pet stores are not funding the breeders to improve like they should. Referencing that program I was talking about earlier, I'm not endorsing it. I have not done enough personal hands-on visiting these kennels, so I just want to point that out. This new growing program is called the Canine Care Program, and they are based out of Purdue with Purdue University. If you would like a contact there for an episode, let me know. I can do that for
Absolutely.
you.
That would be
Um,
great.
And so what they have done is what the USDA could never. And they looked at the science behind what dogs need. And they, working with kennels in their state, started creating these standards. And then because they looked at this and they're like, wow, these standards are making dogs happier, because a dog can't lie to you. If you walk into a dog in a puppy mill, it is terrified in the corner, doesn't want anything to do with you. But the science that went behind all of these studies has now made these dogs happier. Their tails are wagging. They're running up to see you when you come to the cage. And again, I have not visited these in person yet. I do have plans to do so this summer. But it's a fascinating change that we're seeing now, because these breeders, it's a small amount so far. They're of course trying to grow. They're around 200. They are setting themselves apart in their own industry. And because they're taking a stand and saying, these are our regulations, we believe in them, we want to produce happy puppies, we want to produce happy dogs, pet stores are now like, maybe we should only buy from these kinds of breeders. And now those broker guys are saying, oh, maybe we should only buy from these kinds of breeders. So this program is forcing change in the industry in a way that animal welfare people couldn't, because we're the outsiders, right? We're the quote unquote bad guys, and we're telling you, do better, do better. But when it's coming from inside your own house, that's the reckoning we couldn't have forced out with our own hand.
Yeah, well, we don't think in terms of trickle down economics. We think in terms of wealth economics. Is that when you have a business model where you deliver value to people, that there's money to be made, and there is money to be made. It's just showing people how to make it, creating a business model to make it work. But the broker side of this business is something I'm entirely unfamiliar with. It seems like, okay, the breeder sells it, the puppy for $150 to the broker, and the broker sells it for $700, whatever that number is. That's a tremendous markup there. That's a tremendous return. Who are these brokers? I've never heard of them. I don't know that side of that variable in the equation. I'm unfamiliar with.
Well, if you're ready to talk about Jack's puppies, I saw that on your list.
I do. I'm setting you up. I've teed you up.
Yes, love it. So brokers are this like invisible middleman that kind of exists to take away the transparency from the public. So when you go to a pet store in Arizona or I don't know, New York City, for example, they will tell you your puppy came from Jack's Puppies. Jack's Puppies is wonderful in Iowa. They don't have any violations. Jack's Puppies is a warehouse. They are a broker, and they will keep puppies in their facility for like 3 or 4 days. So they will go around Iowa, Missouri, the whole Midwest really, and just collect puppies, put them in their warehouse, make sure they're ready to go on transport to the pet stores. So they are literally just this invisible middleman. And it's creating a lot of confusion. So Jack's Puppies is probably the most prolific puppy broker in the country right now, because as the world started moving towards humane pet store ordinances, which I'm sure you've heard of, it's an ordinance where a pet store cannot sell puppies from puppy mills. Jack's Puppies decided to create their own market again, and they got a rescue license in the state of Iowa and a federal 501c3 status. And they became a nonprofit called Hobo Canine Rescue. Yes. So as we are looking at all these sale records, these health certificates as animals cross state lines, because everything we do is backed up with paper. So we don't just say things, we prove it first and then we talk about it. We were seeing that Jack's Puppies would sell half of a litter of puppies to a pet store in Florida and the other half to a pet store in Chicago where it was illegal to do so, but those puppies were labeled rescue. And it was completely legal except for the charity fraud angle. So we couldn't get the Department of Ag to do anything. We had to literally go through our Iowa Attorney General, and we had to file complaints. We had to get businesses, other businesses that were being affected by this to file complaints. And finally, we got them shut down in the state of Iowa. They were charged, I think they got a $60,000 fine, like nothing big. Their for-profit business still gets to exist, but their nonprofit can't exist anymore. It had to dissolve. And so when you have these like invisible middlemen, they get to do a lot of really invisible, shady stuff in that gray area that we can't see. And that's why it's so scary for advocates when they know these brokers are transporting puppies, sometimes 500 miles across the country. These puppies are crammed in the back of the van by, I think it's like 120 is the most you can put in the back. I'll have to double check that, but it is over 100 puppies in the back. And they're all organized by size, mixed together, litters, illnesses, all of this contagious stuff is getting really yucky back there. And then they just get dumped at a pet store and then they move on to the next store.
Yeah, the whole thing about them mixing all the puppies and the diseases, that just, I don't know, it just baffles me. I used to run the Humane Society here in Memphis, and we would have, like there was one litter of puppies that was literally born in my office. And I had anybody that was from the kennel, like, you don't come in. We actually had a separate building at that time. I was like, you don't come into this building unless you have your feet are clean, you've washed your hands, and then you don't come to my office because the puppies were in the office. And it was because I didn't know what diseases the mother may have had, that she could, because we only had her for a short period of time before she decided to pop those puppies out in my office. But we were like so protective of the puppies, to be, and I'm sure every Humane Society does it, but we took it because of my love of puppies. But I know I took it to the nth degree on the things that you could do and not do with puppies. And just the fact that they're just throwing them all in there willy-nilly and probably had no vaccinations.
Right.
I don't know, it baffles me.
Yeah, I can only imagine the health and behavioral issues that the breeding moms and the breeding dads. I didn't know that. I guess I didn't know a whole lot about how the whole thing works. So they don't artificially inseminate the dogs. They have the females. They have breeding males that are also confined and subjected to these deplorable conditions. Boy, I can only imagine the behavioral health problems as a consequence of that.
Yeah, that's the other side of what we do. So we do public education, we do a whole heck of a lot of research. And then because you saw our website, it's got so much information, we get dozens of emails a week from customers who are like, hey, I bought this puppy and now it's sick. What can I do? Or, hey, this puppy has some neurological something going on. It's having severe behavior issues. What can I do? We're seeing this a lot with these poorly bred animals. And a lot of that goes back to the fact that genetics never played an important matter in the breeding consideration. We are seeing breeds just thrown together. We all know about the doodles. All of us know about that at this point. But there are breeds called like a mini hippo. And that will be it's an English bulldog and a Shar-Pei mix. And that's like the skin issues alone.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. But guess what? It looks like a hippo when it's a baby because it's all wrinkly and small. And then you sell it for $8,000 in the store. Like no one cares about that. They care about the cute name and the cute fuzzy puppy because it's going to be cute no matter how sick it is on the inside.
I always wondered who was coming up with these new hybrid dog, cute named hybrid dog breeds. And I always thought it was maybe a celebrity driven thing, because people, they always have to have the newest, latest, whatever breed of dog. But now talking with you, Mindy, I realize it's these breeders, these puppy mills that are productizing. They realize that, well, we're just not making the margins on the traditional breeds like the Great Pyrenees anymore. So we need to create. So they're actually creating products. If you think about it at its most basic fundamental level, they're actually creating a new product. And as you said, some of these are toy or micro dogs, which nature never intended for dogs that are a certain size, that are so small. Nature never intended them for them to survive, to make it, because for all of the physiological and anatomical reasons. So man, that's insane to think about. These puppy mills are productizing. They're creating new products, which are new breeds of puppies. They give them cute names. They take pictures and videos, and oh my God, no one has the baby hippo on my block or in my town. I'm going to be the first. And then the insane mentality that drives the consumer market, unfortunately, is that everybody has to have the next, the newest, the latest, the greatest. And damn it, that applies to dogs as well. And that's just insane. And I've been thinking about listening to you talk, Minnie. I realize this is dog trafficking. If you think about it, it's dog trafficking. And so do
So
you use that? Do you use that term? Is that term widely used out there
we coined the term puppy laundering when we were seeing these sham rescues, these sham nonprofits. We were like, this is exactly what it is. You're washing the animal 3 times to hide its origin. That is puppy laundering by definition. So that's a term. We have not yet started calling it dog trafficking, but a lot of people will say this is like sex trafficking for animals. This
It
is
is.
like factory farming for dogs because of the connotation. You're right. They create their own business model. They create their own product, their own breeds. And the way that if a pet store wants to place an order for puppies, there's like an online website, kind of like Amazon. So you see a whole list of all the breeds and you can add it to your cart like you would. And that's how you know what shipment of puppies are coming to your store. So if you're the only breeder in the country who is breeding mini hippos, you are going to be very popular for a while from these pet stores who might only be able to sell 1 or 2 a week or a month, depending on how many litters you have. But then other breeders are going to see that, and then they're going to start breeding that breed because that's the popular thing to do.
That's puppy laundering. When you said that, it totally makes sense. That's exactly what they're doing. And that they added the nonprofit angle really irritates the heck out of me. It certainly would seem that would raise the eyebrows of the IRS, because they're trying to get around certain things. But you're right. They're trying to wash where it came from. They're trying to, it came from illicit activities, and so we need to get rid of it, get rid of that, all traces of that, and somehow legitimize its origins. Let's talk about the Animal Welfare Act. I'm not entirely familiar with that in USDA. We mentioned about how antiquated they are, but what do they do right now? It just seems like from this conversation, Mindy, if you could just sit down and have this conversation with people in power that have the connections and resources, and you paint the right picture, that you would get more response from the federal government, because the federal government, as you know, has obviously unlimited resources and ability to address such a societal ill.
Yeah, if I were to get the ear of any policymakers, federal or local, I would tell them 2 things can exist at the same time. 2 problems can be solved at the same time. And what we're seeing is this is kind of just like a fight, right? You have to listen to person A's opinion on this issue, and they won't vote for what you want. So if I were to bend the ear of anyone, that would be my first message. Like, you can still pass animal bills while you are having those hard discussions on other topics that you care about. Just because you're passing a quote unquote easy animal welfare bill doesn't mean you care less about humans. And sometimes I feel like that's the hang up. They don't want to have a discussion on banning puppy mills because the thing they care about is a harder topic that isn't going to be solved as quickly. But with that, sorry, go ahead, Ginger.
You make such a great point there. When I was with the Humane Society, I met with one of our senators and told him like the laws I wanted to have passed in Tennessee. And he said, those are all great. But do you realize if we pass those laws in the state of Tennessee, that they are stricter than what we have for our child welfare laws in the state of Tennessee?
Right. Right.
I think the child welfare laws came from animal protection out of Massachusetts and Angel Hospital. I think that's the origin of. But I know exactly what you're talking about, Minnie, because our business is companion animal cancer, and I've been doing this for 16 years now, and walking all across the country, talking to so many people, legislators, talking to media people, talking to parents as well, and invariably I always get, boy, it's really sad that dogs get cancer. That's a sad thing. But children get cancer over here, and people, there's this child over here that has bone cancer. He's 12 years old, and I'm like, those aren't mutually exclusive. Cancer is a non-discriminating cross-species disease, and but it just so happens it's a pandemic, or it's a tremendously large epidemic here in the United States. In dogs. I mean, we're talking about, Ginger, is it 4 million or 6 million? I can't recall how many. I think it's 6 million new cases. Yeah, 6 million new cases of cancer every year. It's just the numbers, but there's a mental roadblock that some people think you can either care for people or care for animals. You cannot care, that they're mutually exclusive. You can't care. And that's just preposterous and insane, isn't it?
It's so frustrating. It is so frustrating. And yeah, just trying to get people, that's, why we started talking about the human issue, right? We started talking about predatory financing because
Yep.
at least we could get them to care a little bit when we started talking about people. And I don't think animals can be ignored in this equation, because we know studies have shown the way people treat animals does affect how they treat humans. And if
Yes,
somebody is
ma'am.
abusing animals, it is likely they will abuse humans. And so you do have to see that full picture there. And a lot of those policymakers, for whatever reason, don't want to help animals all the time.
To me, it's a value of life issue. If we can't agree as a society that we assign a fundamental value to life that we have to respect, and especially the lives of those that can't make decisions, that don't have agency, that they require care. If we can't agree on that, I just think there's something fundamentally wrong. It's not an animal. You're right. We're all in this together, and that's why at our foundation we use the term now. Or at least I do, instead of companion animal cancer, we use one cancer. We use that term. And so really what we're talking about is it's a humanity issue. It's not an animal welfare issue. It's just humanity. It's a humanity issue, because I think also, as you know, that we found that people that don't value the lives of animals, they typically don't value the lives of people as well, or that, conversely, people that hurt animals or harm animals are likely to harm children and or elderly. So they're just bad people. So it seems like that this is a value of life, a life value humanitarian issue as well.
Right. And if we talk about helping people overall per state, it has to kind of be state level. We would probably see a lot of these puppy mills shut down, because a lot of the facilities that I end up dealing with are glorified animal hoarders. They might be selling those puppies, but my goodness, if you're living in a home with 40 schnauzers, you likely have you likely have some kind of mental health issue that you need assistance with, or financial issue or something. And so I don't want to discredit that a lot of these people who end up being on lists because they are puppy mills, they're also likely suffering in their own way. So I don't want to lose out on that, because people matter. But it's like, how do you solve all the world's problems, right? I think it's by starting with dogs, because it's the great connector. You can walk into a policymaker's office with a dog and they will drop to the floor and start petting that dog before they greet you. And so I do think that there is a way to start these conversations and to really make change, but I think it's going to cause we're going to need to disrupt the system as it currently stands. The way we've been doing things for years and years just may not be the path forward anymore. We need to look into other alternatives.
Yeah, Ginger and I certainly met some of the people that would qualify as the hoarders, and good people, decent people with the best intentions, but it invariably comes down to some type of mental health problem, and it unfortunately affects our fuzzy butts. But you spoke a second ago, and I think it's so important, because unfortunately our society, especially how we're kind of an outrage driven society, is that we want to show the benefits of adopting certain policies, the good reasons why we need to do things, the humanitarian reasons why we should do things. But unfortunately, we are a pain-driven society, and the bigger the pain, the more likely or successful you'll be at passing legislation to get rid of that pain. And you're right, to most people, the pocketbook is the pain. And when you're squandering, when you're stealing, criminally stealing by charging 188% interest, that's criminal. That's criminal at a whole level. Fortunately, that loan sharks and stuff, it's crazy. So that is an interest. It interests me that you've had greater success using that pain, the pain of the pocketbook of the pet owner, as really the way to get more successful, or get more response from legislators.
Right. Well, when you're talking about like ordinance, right? Like passing a humane pet store ordinance, you're going to a city council. And we tried this in Memphis. I don't know if you saw any of this, Ginger, but 2 years
I
ago,
don't think so.
2.5 years ago, before that Petland opened, we tried to work on a humane ordinance there. And it was tough because Petland hadn't opened, but they had already kind of started. But this owner was an owner for a Florida store. And so you had a lot of these organizations coming in saying, look at all these bad puppy mills he buys from. Well, the current council was like, but he's not doing that here yet. That's just what his other store does. He might not do that here. So it was immediately giving them the benefit of the doubt. When you see those USDA inspections, they're like, look, they're clean. There are no violations here. They're not showing state records. They're not showing you anything. But when we were able to say, but here's a contract, here's what the customer is facing, that is what got those policymakers talking, not the old talking points of puppy mills are sad. Because we all know puppy mills are sad. But what a policymaker in Memphis, Tennessee is going to say is, we can't do anything to stop that puppy mill in Iowa. What can I do to help right here in my community? And that's where that pivot had to happen. And that's the success we've seen has been really wonderful.
Right.
Memphis
No,
is
I guess I must have missed that somewhere.
It's okay.
yeah, you'd think that you would pick up on something like that in your own backyard, Ginger.
It was
Yeah, you
literally
think.
like during COVID, it was still like things were virtual. So a lot
Okay.
was done online. Yeah.
It's been a crazy couple of years, to say the least.
Yes.
But Memphis really is, but it's really a great example of what we're dealing with, because you look at Memphis, there are so many societal problems. It's chaos there, and animal welfare is so far down on the list of all the problems. We went to a soup kitchen to raise money for, I think they call them food insecure children or something. And it's like 100,000 people. And good God, Memphis is not very big. It's not that big of a city. And so I don't know what percentage of the population, the children population, that represents. But you think, wow, where does animal welfare come in terms of priority? Where does it come on the list? And my assessment was it's not very high. Dog concerns, aren't they very high? So did you say that you received success, that you were successful in Memphis?
Not in Memphis.
Okay.
No, in Memphis, the conversation turned into this could create jobs, right? This could help our community.
What?
This could bring in
5
taxes.
jobs?
This could, right. But I mean, it's still that conversation of this is a business. What they're doing is legal. Everything they're saying is legal. They have lawyers here. We don't want to get sued. There's a lot that goes into passing an ordinance or passing a law, but talking about how the store is harming people did get the attention of a lot of policymakers. And I'll tell you, we thought we had that vote up until the vote happened. And we are not sure what happened behind the scenes, but it went from like overwhelming, yes, this is going to pass, to whatever deal happened behind the scenes happened and it failed. And it was
there are a lot of deals in
sad
Memphis
time.
that happened.
I bet Steve Cohen stepped in and killed the deal for whatever reason. This is obviously a lightning rod of a conversation or a topic, but I don't like politicians because
No.
they usually sell their soul and that of society for the lowest bidder. And so you track a lot of data. I'm interested, Mindi, are you finding politicians, because you've already set the case for this brokerage business and the puppy mill business for being big business, a lot of money. If we're talking 2 to 5 million puppies every year times $1,000, $500, that's a tremendous amount of money. And you're encountering all these roadblocks at the local level, sometimes the state level. Are you finding, Mindy, that you're finding politicians that are being paid off by jacks? Or any of the other brokerage? Are you finding that out? You're laughing. What are you learning about that?
I hate lobbyists.
Lobbyists.
That is
Lobbyists.
how these people are getting paid off a lot of times. Anecdotally, I can tell you that we were trying to kill, I say we, the colloquial animal welfare world, were trying to kill a preemption bill in Florida, and a certain national pet store showed up with puppies to the Capitol, and then everyone got to play with puppies, and then certain lawmakers went home with certain puppies. So yes, we see pet store owners or often puppy mill owners getting lobbyists in the state level, making campaign finance donations. We're seeing it in every state that there's a bill actively being discussed. This is happening. In the last year here in Iowa, we also release like a quarterly USDA violation report. We don't like to like put our bias out there, put our opinion out there. So we will show you exactly what happened that quarter for all of the violations. Again, no opinion. You just click on the report and you can see it for yourself. We don't want to influence you. We just give you the data. Because of that, our work has been getting in the news every 3 months. We are getting in the news because that report is getting released because the violations are horrendous often. We noticed that one of the largest puppy mills here in Iowa got a lobbyist this year before any bill had even been talked about. He was ready, and this guy, he's so horrific. His violations are so bad. He threw a bag of dead puppies at an inspector and didn't get his license pulled. His violations are so bad that he uses brokers to sell his puppies. So his name will never show up on a puppy cage anywhere across the country. It will only say that broker name. And if we try to do work behind the scenes to find out where he's selling his puppies, we're hitting walls. The department doesn't know, no one can tell us, but he got a lobbyist to fight us at the Capitol this year because he is the one who doesn't want to have to follow our state laws, right? Remember I mentioned that loophole?
Yeah.
He has millions. He is making, at any time, he has 900 adult breeding dogs at any given time. He is selling thousands of puppies a year and making millions. So he has the money to fight us legislatively. And yes, that is what we are seeing all over, which is why I smiled.
Yeah, if the next terrorist attack on U.S. soil could be on K Street, that would not be a bad thing. Lobbyist, or it all comes down to money. We're back to money. We're back to big business. So you can try to show legislators the amount of pain that the public is paying for, suffering, and that paints a clear picture to them. But the reality is that they need money for their own ends, and it comes to that, and I would imagine the lobbyists can outspend your organization and pretty much any other organization, maybe save for HSUS or some of the other ones, times 10, maybe times 100. And unfortunately, politicians will sell their souls and their entire communities for whatever price they're willing to accept, or whatever they can get for it. And so in the previous conversation I had about this topic, I asked, and I think it's important because you probably don't have millions of dollars to spend on lobbyists and stuff. Have you tried, Mindy, to partner with HSUS and some of the bigger organizations? Say, look, if we kind of create a pool of funds that we can allocate to this advocacy, and fortunately hire our own lobbyists, because I guess that's what you have to do, which you're basically putting money back into a corrupt system anyway. But I guess that's how business works in this country. Have you tried to partner with some of the bigger?
That was him, right? Not me.
I'm sorry.
That's him. Yeah.
What's him? Oh, did I freeze? Are you there? All right, my apologies to our audience. For some reason, I'm connected to the Ethernet by cable. I've got my Wi-Fi, and I've got good connectivity, but for some reason, I just totally dropped off. in the middle of the conversation. So I think we fixed the problem, and we're going to pick up where we left off. Although I think Ginger, you and Mindy continued. You probably were having a better conversation between the two of you without me as the distraction. But
we were trying to until you butted in again. But anyway,
I always, yeah, my apologies for butting in back again. But I'm curious, and even if you guys did discuss it, I'm curious your success or whether you've had any success in partnering with some of the big national, international animal welfare organizations that understand the problem that, I mean, totally understand what you're working on, and that it requires financial resources that can compete with these multi-million dollar operations.
Yeah, so we've always done a really good job of partnering with the HSUS staff in each state. So every HSUS, most states, I should say, has a state director, and they are considered the lobbyist in that state. So here in Iowa, I work very closely with Preston, and he is the HSUS paid lobbyist. So I don't have to pay him. He and I just get to talk. I get to share my information with him, and then he and his lobby, because then he has two lobbyists at the Capitol as well, they will share our information with the Capitol, and I will go to like be an expert witness or testify that way. But we do really rely on those national organizations. A few years ago, I tried to start a like file sharing type system because I know they have a lot more money than we do. Like that, we're not even going to compare that, but I thought it would be good and fiscally responsible for us to share files. If I'm doing a FOIA, why would you pay for that? Why would you give money twice to the same business? I've already got it, kind of thing. That's been a little touch and go. File sharing amongst large organizations is very, very difficult. But when it comes to that boots on the ground, we're in constant communication. You've got Best Friends Animal Society, HSUS, and ASPCA. These four organizations, we communicate pretty weekly when it comes to policy or things that are needed. And then the people who have the money for the lobbyists pay for that. Or for example, like my organization, we do cute little like PSAs when we know it's like puppy buying season. So we're trying to catch the buyers. We know that the HSUS will spend thousands of dollars in Florida on ads on TV educating about Petland or about this bill. So we spend our money very, very differently, and both organizations think that that's an effective use. We don't have the funding to do like the lobbyist type stuff though. And I just don't know if we ever will get into that 501c4 world and start paying people to listen to us, because I know they're not listening anyway.
It's a dark, it's a dark world. It's dark money. It's dark. It's to a certain extent, it's evil when you think that people are making decisions on behalf of the welfare of other lives that they can be bought off. But the reality in the current system, medieval system that we have, it does really come down to dollars and cents. So but you know, the good thing about money is it works both ways. That if and I go back to this, and my apologies, it's my default's always business in trying to understand business solutions to things. It just seems like if there's a breeder, there obviously is money available out there for good, properly, responsibly bred dogs, animals. And if a business model can be put together and the financial resources raised for it, it just seems like that would be one of the many strategies to incorporate, because really what we've been talking about is you have a multi-tiered, you have lots of battles on lots of fronts that you have to approach at the same time.
Right. And I think that some organizations fall in love with their version of a solution. We'll talk about pet store ordinances. Everyone's all in. They think that is the solution to end puppy mills. We know that there are a lot of things that need to be done to end puppy mills, and so we don't want to put all of our efforts into one basket, even if that's the one basket that you get a lot of wins on. You get to put your logo on a thing on Facebook and say, look, this city passed an ordinance. You might seem like you're getting a lot of wins quickly, but we want to make sure it's having that intended effect and actually shutting down puppy mills. So you're right. There's so many different angles that we can tackle this. And we do. We have a staff of 3 behind the scenes, and we have more than 300 volunteers. So we are very small, but we are at the table with those national organizations because the output that we have and the effect that we have is comparable.
Yeah, I would certainly be good to get a Super Bowl ad or something at that level where so many eyes are on it. I specifically speak to the Super Bowl, not because I'm a big football fan or whatever, but because you have a lot of eyes on commercials, which I don't watch commercials at all. They're just a noise and distraction, and they're so poorly done typically. And I probably wouldn't be able to watch a commercial about puppy mills because I can't even watch the ASPCA's commercials. They just tear my heart into two. But it just seems like that we talked about the regulatory and legislative environment and challenges, but there's also the consumer demand and consumer that, I mean, everything comes from demand. Demand drives everything in the business world, right? We know that. So how do you address the demand or at least educate the demand so that they know, okay, if I go into a pet land, again, using them as example, not singling them out or anyone else, if I go into this place where you have all the data and that they could somehow see that okay, well, this person acquires these puppies from non-reputable or breeders that we don't know and is questionable. It just seems like most people, most consumers, would not make bad choices if they had the right information.
Right. And that's why bailing out Benji, we say we're your resource for ending puppy mills because we are here for you as the person. We don't really have an agenda. Like we want cruelty to end. We want people to not suffer. We live in this weird human and animal well-being area is what we refer to it as. We're in this weird little gray area. We know that you're going to buy a dog if that's what you want. If you are going to buy a dog, I will help you make sure you didn't buy it from a puppy mill. I'm not going to shame you. I'm not going to give you a list of 500 reasons why you should adopt, because by the time someone has emailed us or come to us asking for help, they've already thought about it. They know what breed they want. It's not my job to try and convince them otherwise. It is my job to show them this is a puppy mill. This is not a puppy mill. Here's how you know the difference. Here are the questions to ask. And here is what to look for if you choose to buy. We still always promote adoption, right? We talk about how to find, petfinder.com, put that breed in. You might find your dog. But we have to, as animal advocates, stop with the adopt, don't shop conversation. And that's really hard because it did its job. We needed that for decades. We needed that. But now breeders are using the term adoption. Pet stores are using the term adoption. How do we cut that phrase out and we talk about adopt or shop responsibly? Because unfortunately, now we know there are rescues that are fronts for puppy mills. We know that this world is extremely unclear for the consumer. Our job is to make it as clear as possible, and that's what we're here to do.
Yeah, I like it that I love it that you're the resource for prospective pet parents, for someone looking to get a puppy, to adopt a dog. You're the go-to resource. So I know you and Ginger covered it during while I was being lost my internet connection, but let's go ahead and go over one more time. It seems like you have this Benji's buddies, and it seems like they're your team to help get the word out. So tell us about Benji's buddies.
Yeah, so Benji's Buddies is actually what we started during COVID to help educate children about pet adoption and puppy mills. And so we are giving them the tools they need when they want to get a new animal, because the kids are usually the drivers in these conversations. And if we can start young and start talking about what a puppy mill is or just pet adoption. I come from a teaching background. I was a preschool teacher doing this at the same time until about 2018. So for the first half of my career at Bailing Out Benji, I was a full-time teacher. And so having conversations where you just use the term adopt and start really easily explaining this to children when they're young helps those conversations at home. And one of our volunteers, her name is Peggy Race, she wrote a wonderful children's book called Deputy Paws and the Puppy Mill Cause. And that's for children ages probably 5 to 9-ish. It rhymes. It is a cute little animated thing. And to your point about the ASPCA's commercial, I say that's why I didn't know about puppy mills for so long. I turned the station. And so Bailing Out Benji is committed to not sharing graphic imagery just to share graphic imagery. Like if you follow us on social media, you might see a scary photo of a puppy mill because it's attached to a news story or something we personally did. But I don't do things for clickbait. And I know that gets you more likes and more shares on Facebook, but you're not going to see that kind of content on our page. And so we're very clear that we are a family focused when it comes to education. So with our teams that are out there, we're in 36 states, they're at their table educating about what puppy mills are using facts and data. They're showing you our puppy mill map for Wisconsin, showing you all of the horrific puppy mills in your state, and it's color coded based on the number of adult breeding dogs. We're not showing you the dog suffering. We're showing you the dog in your backyard has 800 dogs in it. So those types of things are way better at explaining to the public without making them avoid your table because you have a picture of a dog that's suffering, a dog that probably doesn't exist anymore. It has probably already passed away. Because, we've seen those like regurgitated photos online. Bailing Out Benji exists to provide current and accurate data on this industry. And so that's really where we try to go forward. Educate with kindness and compassion, and don't be gratuitous with those types of images.
Yeah, it's something that we don't do at our foundation as well as use pictures of dogs with cancer as a fundraising. I just and awareness campaign. That's just I just don't like that, and I don't.
Feel icky.
Correct.
An okay word to use.
There's no way you can walk away from shooting a video with pictures of dogs suffering from cancer that you could feel good, or I could feel good from doing that. But then again, I mean, you would think that there are obviously clearly there are people that these brokers and stuff that do all these just atrocious things, and morally they're fine with it. But it's a Herculean task you have, Mindy. I would love for me and Ginger. We're happy to help you out in whichever way you can. We're not obviously nearly as big as ASPCA, and it's certainly not our mission, but I mean, we have value in companion animals in society. If you see it on our discussion points, it's on every single discussion point. It's part of our mission, because the more that humans can value companion animals, the more we can assign a greater value on companion animals. It helps everything, every animal welfare, whether we can better address cancer in companion animals, or we can address the breeders and how actually people adopt and get companion animals in this country. So, but it's just frightening that these puppy mills, to me now, are changing the definitions of things and changing the meanings and using words like adopt, that they've totally got this. Because I thought, I just had an antiquated idea of puppy mills, and I thought that they were easily identifiable. But now, after this conversation, they're hidden in plain sight, and you really have to do a tremendous amount of due diligence and research to figure out where you're getting your adopting your fuzzy butt from. So we've gone a little bit long, but I still feel like we haven't touched everything. So, Mindy, the first question I have for you, is there anything that I left out or we left out that you want to go over?
I don't think so. I was going to mention, actually, so if you're fascinated by that puppy laundering broker conversation, we partnered with Sony Productions, and we did a limited series with them called The Puppy Kingpin. So the podcast itself is called Smokescreen, and then The Puppy Kingpin. And it's only, I believe, 7 episodes, but it really goes into why did this person get away with it? Jack's puppies. Why are puppy mills legal? How are sheriffs dealing with it? So it's a really 7-part little look into what we talked about today, but a little more in depth.
If I can find it, I will link to it in our show notes.
No worries.
I'm a consumer of podcasts. I'm not only a podcast host, I'm a consumer of podcasts. So I will look for it. It's so important. Kind of one of the final thoughts I had is I'm not sure if children read books anymore or how much they read books, but it certainly would be interesting to get, there are a ton of children TikTok influencers out there, and it certainly would be good to get a partnership with one of them.
Yeah, that would be.
Because it seems like those people are awfully effective at getting information out to a really large platform. So we're happy to do that here with Fuzzybutts and Friends. So anytime, Mindy, you have anything you want to come back and talk to us about or share with our audience, maybe it's not a full episode, we'll do an update episode. You're always welcome back here on Fuzzybutts and Friends.
Thank you. Can I show you a picture of my dogs? I did pull one up.
I would love to see it.
Yes.
Do I have to see? I think let's see. Am I allow you? Okay, you should be able to share, I think.
Oh, it says disabled still.
Okay.
If not, I can always send you guys one.
All
Oh,
right.
there we go.
Work? Okay.
So these are my current puppies that I'm sharing my life with. Can you see them?
I can, yeah.
Yes.
So
Look at
this is
those
from Eleanor's Instagram account. I just pulled it up quick, but right here, this is Mose. He's probably close to 7 now. He was rescued from a horrific flooding situation that happened in Iowa and in Missouri a few years ago. He came to me heartworm positive, so we got him completely healthy and then adopted him because he was so scared of everyone but me. The heartworm treatment we don't know what happened beforehand. He was in a trailer with 40 dogs and a pig. We think it was a hoarding type situation, but when that flood came, it was the best thing that happened to him. He found us. So he's my little heart dog. He follows me everywhere. And this is my Eleanor. She is the golden retriever that came from a puppy mill that we shut down here in Iowa a few years ago. They had, at the height of their career, over 1,000 dogs on their property. And her case is a really good one to show that the USDA documented over 220 violations at this person's facility. And it took the Department of Justice to get involved to shut them down. So the
Wow.
DOJ, yeah, had to overstep the USDA to shut this person down. So thankfully she's with us. She almost didn't survive what happened to her, but she's happy and healthy now. This is Lola. She's my 11-year-old lab. And happy as can be. We've had her since she was 18 months old. She was rescued from a puppy mill. She had dog bites all over her, and she was really not having a good time there. And this is my little puppy that we just rescued last year, who was emaciated. She's now almost a year old. So we've got Mose, Lola, Mila, and Eleanor.
You have a lovely family of Fuzzybutts. They're
Thank
wonderful,
you.
and Eleanor, she's gorgeous, and I'll make sure that I follow her on
Yes.
Instagram. When we post this, I'll make sure we tag her on Instagram. So wow, that's Eleanor. Look,
I'm looking. We also foster dogs. So we just fostered a kitten. She found a home, and now we're fostering this little pug that's also a puppy mill survivor. So yeah, that's
was
our life. We just always have animals coming and going.
that's the way it should be. That's quite a life you have and quite a
Yes.
mission you have, and it's extraordinary and it's so complex and it's a tremendous challenge. So whatever we can do to help you out, Mindy. I'm kind of jumping the gun, but please let everybody know where they can go to help you out, your website, your social media accounts.
Well, first I want to say, just remember this all started because someone bought a dog. So let's not shame people who buy dogs. You have no idea what their potential is. I was just a kid, didn't know what I was doing, and now look at us. So you can find Bailing Out Benji on Facebook, Instagram, X, I guess, Twitter. We are on TikTok, and then our website is bailingoutbenji.com. And you can reach out to us in any way. If you have bought a dog and you're curious where it might have come from, you can email us and we can give you any information we might find. Or if you're looking for your next pet and you need help, or if you want to get involved and volunteer, we are here to help you be successful in your community.
Absolutely. It's tremendous that you have volunteers in 36 states but it just speaks to the integrity of your mission and the importance of your mission as well. All right. I thank you so much. We've reached that time of the show, Ginger. We like to take a moment or two to share cancer tips, sponsored by the Puppy Up Foundation. Ginger, do you have one for us this week?
I do. And I'm back to the lumps and bumps because my
Lumpy
own
and bumpy?
Mayberry, because yes, I'm lumpy and bumpy, but as dogs get older, they get lumpy and bumpy.
We all
But
do.
my own little Mayberry had a lumpy bump on her behind, close to her tail. I took her to the vet last week, and they were like, "Do you want us to aspirate it?" And I'm like, "Absolutely, we're going to aspirate it." Um, they looked at the cells, and they could not determine whether or not they were cancer cells or not. So we sent it off to the pathologist, and I'm still waiting for those results. But those things need to be checked out. It could have been nothing but a lipoma. It could have been something that the vet could have seen right away that was benign. But of course, it's Mayberry, And they couldn't determine whether it looked cancerous or not, but just that they were some undetermined funky or wonky cells in there. So I'm waiting for that. So if everybody will just please cross their fingers that those wonky cells are not cancer, I would appreciate that. But again, remember to find a lumpy bump. If you find it, take it to your vet, have it aspirated. Sometimes that's all they have to do is just look at it. Sometimes it has to go to a pathologist. So anyway, check for lumps and bumps on a monthly basis.
Yeah, and if you want to find out 10, really just 10 early warning signs for cancer in your companion animal, you can go to puppyup.org. We have that list on the website. Thank you, Ginger, for the cancer tip of the week. And before we go, I'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode of Fuzzybutts and Friends. It's Genie's Therapeutics. As some of you know, there you go. They have this awesome new packaging, and I use it. I love it. It's got the dropper or that screws into the bottle, and it measures it out. Yep, I love it. It's easy to dose that way. It's a lot more efficient than the other way. But it speaks to the really just the talented, innovative team at Genie's Therapeutics, and I want to thank them for sponsoring our program and also providing Indiana with a nice supply of CBD. It helps them. We do it twice a day. I think he's on a pretty high dose of it, so it certainly helps with his inflammation. And you can learn more about the importance of CBD and all of its wonderful anti-inflammatory properties at geniestherapeutics.com. All right, Ginger, I think I kind of sometimes get things out of order, but I forgot to ask you, did I screw anything up or leave anything out this time?
No, you didn't. Well, something happened in the whole
That
episode,
wasn't
but
I think my modem. Sorry.
I don't think that was your fault. So we won't fault you for that.
No, I think the whole modem shut down here. The whole thing just turned off because it went dark, and it's never happened before. So again, my apologies for the technical difficulties. I think we have this in two different segments. I'm going to have to edit them together. So I guess I have to find out what the problem is and hopefully fix it. All right, then, everybody, thank you for being patient with us, and thank you for listening and watching or watching. You can watch Fuzzybutts and Friends on our YouTube channel. That's fuzzybuttsstudios.com. Or you can listen to our podcast on one of your favorite podcast platforms, such as Spotify or iHeartRadio. Until next week, thank you very much. Thank you. I'd like to thank Mindy with bailing out Benji for joining our program this week. Thank you, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week. Puppy up. Talk soon.